You've lived long enough to know life is more than what we can see. But have you ever paused, truly paused, to ask yourself what lies beyond your final breath? This question, ancient, sacred, and quietly terrifying, has echoed in the hearts of sages, seekers, and wanderers across the ages. And today, in your quiet moment of reflection, it finds you. If death is not the end, what happens next? If the body fades, does something continue? The Dalai Lama, spiritual guide to millions, offers not superstition, but a compassionate clarity. A vision not of fear, but of freedom, of reality beyond death, and the truth of reincarnation. Take a deep breath. Let this not be just a video, but a passage, a slow walk through the sacred veil between this life and the next. You must understand this before anything else. Death is not your enemy. We fear it, yes, because we mistake it for destruction. But in the teachings of the Dalai Lama, death is not a collapse. It is a transition, a shift, like dusk turning into night, like the tide going out before returning once more. He says death is a part of life, as natural as birth. To deny death is to deny life itself. So if you have lost someone, or if you feel time pressing on your shoulders heavier with each passing season, then listen not with fear, but with readiness. You were never meant to live in ignorance of what comes after. You were meant to remember. In Tibetan Buddhism, the space after death is not a blank void. It is called bardo, a word meaning intermediate state. Imagine a space between breaths, between the inhale of life and the exhale of rebirth. That is the bardo. When the body ceases, the mind, subtle, luminous, still very much alive, enters this state. Here, time is not measured in minutes. It is measured in clarity, in karma, because in the bardo, your inner world becomes your only world. If you lived a life of hatred, fear, and cruelty, what you face in that space reflects it. But if you cultivated peace, if you lived with compassion, generosity, and truth, then the bardo is not terror, it is light, it is freedom. And this is why the Dalai Lama teaches not to prepare your will, but your mind, because the mind is what travels on. Perhaps you've felt it before, that inexplicable pull towards something greater, something familiar that no book could ever explain. It's not your imagination. You are older now, wiser. The soul does not forget its journey, only the details. But even now, in dreams, in strange déjà vu, in silent longings, it remembers. Reincarnation is not myth. It is not fantasy. It is the sacred cycle of becoming. You have lived before, and unless you attain liberation, you will live again. The Dalai Lama says our rebirth is not a reward or punishment. It is the natural unfolding of our own mind stream. So if you ask, why was I born into this life with these people, these pains, these joys, the answer is within you, in the karma you've carried and the lessons you have yet to learn. And if you want to shape your next life, then shape this one, because it is this moment, this thought, this intention, that lays the path for what you will become next. But what does it mean to come back? Are we reborn as the same person, with the same face, the same heartaches? No, not quite. The Dalai Lama explains reincarnation is not a repetition, but a continuation. Just as a flame lights another candle, not identical, but connected. You are not the same person you were 20 years ago, and you won't be the same in the next life. But the stream of consciousness, the thread that links memory, choice, and desire, it carries on. That stream is shaped by karma, not in the way many think. It's not about punishment. It's not some cosmic scorecard. Karma is cause and effect, thought and consequence. Plant a seed of anger and bitterness will grow. Plant compassion and peace will bloom. So ask yourself, what seeds have you been planting in the garden of your soul? Now perhaps you're wondering, how does the Dalai Lama himself know all of this? He is not just a teacher. He is believed to be a tulku, a reincarnated being who returns again and again, not because he must, but because he chooses to. He chooses to return, to teach, to guide, to walk among us life after life until suffering ends. When the 13th Dalai Lama died in 1933, the monks searched for signs, omens, dreams, and finally a child was found in a remote village. A child who recognized the belongings of the previous Dalai Lama, who spoke of places he'd never seen, who knew people he'd never met. That child was the 14th Dalai Lama. He did not claim to be a god. He claimed only this, that the mind is more vast than we understand, and that life is not a single chapter but a long unfolding story, a sacred journey, life after life. So how should we live now knowing this? Should we fear death? Should we dread the unknown? The Dalai Lama would gently shake his head. He would say, live with awareness, live with kindness, live as though every word you speak, every thought you allow, every action you take matters because it does. We prepare for death not by hiding from it, but by making peace with it, by understanding it. When you take your final breath, no possessions go with you, no titles, no bank accounts, only your mind, only your karma. He says, if you want to know your past, look at your present. If you want to know your future, look at your actions now. It's not too late. You're not too old. You are right where you need to be to make this life count. Whether you have 10 years left or 10 days, you have time to awaken. And here's something beautiful, perhaps something you've always sensed. Reincarnation isn't just about returning, it's about evolving. The goal is not to live again and again forever. It is to grow, to shed the illusions of ego, anger, attachment, and fear, to become free. And when you reach that state of complete clarity of enlightenment, you no longer need to return. But some, like the Dalai Lama, come back anyway, out of compassion, to help others find the way. This is the heart of Tibetan Buddhist belief. You are not trapped. You are being invited into awakening. You don't have to believe blindly. You are encouraged to explore, to reflect, to test these teachings against your own experience. The truth, the Dalai Lama says, is not something you're forced to accept. It's something you come to recognize deep in your own heart. And when you do, death loses its sting, because death is no longer the end. It becomes the beginning of something even more true. When we speak of life after death, it's easy to imagine a distant future, something far beyond our grasp. But the Dalai Lama teaches us something profound. Life after death is not just about what happens then, it is about the now. The way we live this moment shapes the next and the next after that. Every breath you take, every choice you make is a thread weaving into the great tapestry of your soul's journey. This is the essence of reincarnation, not a cycle to be feared, but a sacred path to be embraced. And yet the mystery remains. What happens in that in-between time, in the moments after the last breath? The Tibetan Buddhists call this the bardo, an intermediate state that can last up to 49 days. It is a time of transition where the mind is free from the body, but still bound to its attachments. In this bardo, the mind can be overwhelmed by visions, some terrifying, some blissful reflections of one's deepest fears, desires, and truths. The Dalai Lama reminds us that how we live, what we cultivate in our hearts, will guide us through this passage. This is why mindfulness, compassion, and spiritual practice are not just abstract ideas. They are practical tools, essential preparations for the ultimate journey. Because when death arrives, it comes to everyone, without exception. For those of us in the later seasons of life, this truth can be both sobering and liberating. Sobering because it calls us to face what we might have long avoided, the reality of death. Liberating because it frees us from the fear that death is the end. The Dalai Lama offers a gentle reminder. Fear clouds the mind, binds us to suffering. But understanding death, accepting it as a natural part of life's cycle, brings peace. It opens the heart to love more deeply, to forgive more freely, and to live more fully. He often speaks of compassion, the force that connects us all, not just human beings, but every living creature. Compassion is the light that guides us through the darkness of death and beyond. And here is a beautiful paradox. By embracing compassion and letting go of ego, we begin to transcend the cycle of rebirth itself. We open the door to enlightenment, a state of complete freedom and bliss. So what does this mean for you watching or reading this now? Perhaps you have loved ones who have passed on, leaving a hole in your heart that feels impossible to fill. Or maybe you wonder what lies ahead for yourself. Is there hope? Is there peace? The Dalai Lama's message is clear. Death is not the final chapter. It is a doorway, a threshold where the soul's journey continues, shaped by love, compassion, and the choices we make. If you carry regrets, know that forgiveness is possible for yourself and others. If you carry fears, know that peace can be cultivated through mindfulness and spiritual practice. If you seek meaning, know that your life is part of a vast unfolding story that transcends time, and this story is not written by chance. It is written by your heart. As we come to the close of this reflection, imagine this. You stand at the edge of a vast river. Behind you, your life flows like a winding path of memories, joys, sorrows, and lessons. Before you, the river stretches into mist, unknown, mysterious, yet inviting. The Dalai Lama encourages us to step forward with courage, with awareness, with compassion. Because life after death is not a destination to fear, it is a journey to prepare for, a journey to embrace. And perhaps most importantly, it is a reminder that this life right here, right now, is precious beyond measure. So live it fully, love deeply, and walk with the gentle knowing that death is not the end, but the beginning of a new awakening. Thank you for listening. May you find peace on your journey in this life and beyond. If this message touched your heart or sparked new thoughts, I'd love for you to stay with us. Subscribe to the channel and become part of a community that truly cares, where we explore life's biggest questions together with openness and compassion. Click subscribe and let's walk this path side by side, learning, growing, and finding peace one step at a time. Your presence here means more than you know. Thank you for being you.